Somebody left a comment under a veterans community post the other day, and I have not been able to shake it. The person said, more or less, I served this country, my knees are gone, the stairs are getting harder every winter, the bathroom is becoming a hazard, and now I'm being told that if I fix any of it, the bill is all mine. And when I read that, something in me tightened, because that is exactly how people lose money in Canada, not because they are careless, not because they do not work hard, not because they are trying to game the system, but because the help is sitting there under a name nobody would think to search. And if you are a Canadian veteran, or the spouse, daughter, son, or caregiver of one, there is a very real chance that the homework you have been putting off may fall under a federal credit that can be worth up to $3,000 in a single year. Not $10, not a coupon, not a vague, maybe there's assistance somewhere. Up to $3,000. And the painful part is that a lot of the people who could use it most either never hear about it, assume it is only for somebody in a wheelchair, or find out after the contractor has already been paid. So let's slow this down and talk plainly, because when it comes to aging at home, recovering at home, or simply making a house safe enough to stay in, the difference between knowing the rule and not knowing it can be thousands of dollars, and for some veterans, it can be the difference between staying in the home and being pushed out of it by a preventable bill. The first thing to understand is that the $3,000 number is not made up, and it is not a veterans-only program. It comes from Canada's Home Accessibility Tax Credit, the HATC. Here is the arithmetic in plain English. The federal government allows eligible people to claim up to $20,000 in eligible home accessibility expenses in a year, and the credit is calculated at 15%. 15% of $20,000 is $3,000. That is where the headline comes from. On the tax return, it is claimed on line 31285. Now, this is where veterans need to pay attention, because a lot of former service members assume they do not fit unless they are over 65. That is only one way in. If a veteran is 65 or older by the end of the year, that veteran can qualify. But there is a second door into the same credit, eligibility for the disability tax credit. If you are eligible for the DTC, age does not block you. That matters because a younger veteran with a serious mobility restriction, chronic impairment, or another qualifying condition may be able to access this even before 65. And it also matters for families, because in some cases an eligible family member can make the claim for a qualifying individual. That means this is not just a story about one retired person living alone. This can be about a household trying to make the home workable for a veteran parent, spouse, or dependent relative. The house must be in Canada, and it must be the place ordinarily inhabited by the qualifying person, but once you understand that framework, you start to realize this is broader than most people were ever told. Now here is where a lot of money gets left on the table, because most people hear home accessibility and immediately picture one thing, a wheelchair ramp. A ramp can qualify, yes, but the actual rule is wider than that. The renovation has to be of an enduring nature, integral to the dwelling, and it must either allow the qualifying individual to gain access to, be mobile or functional within the home, or reduce the risk of harm in the home or while getting into it. That is much broader than people think. Grab bars can count. Handrails can count. Widening a doorway can count. A walk-in shower, a safer bathroom layout, a threshold change at the entrance, even work that reduces fall risk or improves movement through the house may count if it meets the rule. This is why the veteran who says, "I don't need luxury, I just need to stop climbing over a tub wall every day and hoping I don't slip," may be talking about an eligible renovation without realizing it. The same is true for the veteran whose hands are no longer strong enough for certain fixtures, or whose balance has changed, or who now needs the entry to the home to work differently than it did 20 years ago. But the line has to be respected. Routine maintenance is not the same thing. A standard roof repair does not become accessibility work just because the homeowner is older. Appliances are generally out. Entertainment devices are out. Financing costs are out. Housekeeping, gardening, and recurring maintenance are out. And if the renovation is mainly about increasing the market value of the home rather than improving accessibility or reducing risk, that is not what this credit is for. The change has to become part of the house. It has to have a real accessibility or safety function. And that one distinction is why two renovations with the same price tag can be treated completely differently at tax time. There is another part of this that almost nobody explains properly, and if you catch it, it can make the value of the job much better. The CRA states that if an expense qualifies both as a home accessibility expense and as a medical expense, you can claim it in both places, as part of the home accessibility tax credit and as part of the medical expense tax credit. That is not a loophole. That is written into the CRA guidance. So imagine a veteran installs a medically necessary accessible bathroom feature, or modifies the home because a service-related condition now limits mobility or safe use of part of the dwelling. In the right circumstances, that same spending may not have to live in only one box. It may do two jobs. And there is an additional detail that matters even more for people trying to combine help sources. The CRA also states that the HATC is not reduced by government assistance, including grants, forgivable loans, or tax credits from federal or provincial governments. Read that slowly, because it changes how you plan. It means the person who assumes, if VAC helps me with part of this, the tax credit disappears, may be wrong. The person who assumes, if I get another government program involved, I can't still look at the accessibility credit, may also be wrong. This is why veterans and families need to stop thinking in one program at a time terms and start thinking like planners. The real question is not only, is there one benefit? The real question is, which parts of this job can be supported by which programs, and in what order? Because that is where the real money sits, and that is where people who only ask one question at the hardware store counter end up missing what the rules actually allow. Now let's talk directly about why this matters for veterans in a way it may not matter for everybody else, because federal tax credits are only one layer of the picture. Veterans Affairs Canada has its own support structure, and one of the names you need to know is the Veterans Independence Program, often called VIP. This program provides annual tax-free funding to help cover services that support living at home. The official VAC page lists things like grounds maintenance, housekeeping, meal preparation, personal care, professional health and support services, transportation, and, this is the part that matters most for this conversation, home adaptations, meaning contributions toward modifications to the veteran's principal residence that are necessary for everyday activities. In other words, some veterans are not only looking at a tax credit after the fact, they may also be looking at VAC support connected to the home itself. Eligibility is not universal, and that point matters. VAC says people should apply if they need home care services and have qualified for a disability benefit, have qualified for the War Veterans Allowance, receive prisoner of war compensation, or are eligible for but cannot access a contract bed in long-term care. So this is not a walk in and everyone gets it situation. But if you are an eligible veteran, or helping one, then the home conversation gets much more serious, because there may be a veteran-specific route in addition to the tax route. An Office of the Veterans Ombud resource guide describes home adaptations under this support area and gives examples such as handrails, electric garage doors, stair glides, shower seats, ramps, and widening doorways. That same guide lists home adaptations up to $7,729.20, but the smart way to hear that number is not as a promise, it is as a signal that real money exists in this space and that current approval details and rates should always be confirmed with VAC directly. And here is the part that separates a successful claim from a painful surprise: with VAC home adaptations, timing matters. The VAC policy says home adaptations must be pre-authorized based on estimates obtained by the eligible individual. Normally, 2 detailed cost estimates are required, although in exceptional cases such as rural areas one may be enough. The policy also warns that if you go ahead without pre-authorization, you may be left financially liable even if the work would otherwise have fit the criteria. That is the kind of sentence people wish they had heard before they signed the deposit check. The policy adds something else veterans need to hear clearly. If a veteran may be eligible for home adaptations under both the Treatment Benefits Program and the Veterans Independence Program, VAC says treatment benefits should be considered first. That means this is not just a matter of, I heard there was a credit, so I'll renovate and sort it out later. No. The order matters. The approval path matters. The paperwork matters. The estimates matter. And the record-keeping matters. For the tax side, the CRA wants invoices, agreements, receipts, proof of payment, vendor or contractor identification, dates, details of the work, and Gulf Standard Time/Hawaii Standard Time registration information where applicable. For the VAC side, you are dealing with pre-authorization and cost estimates before the work is done. So if a veteran or family member hears, up to $3,000 back, and treats that like permission to rush into a renovation without checking the benefit sequence first, that is exactly how money gets lost. The smarter approach is not glamorous, but it works. Ask first, estimate first, authorize first where needed, document everything, and only then let the project move. Now I need to tell you the trap, because without this part, the whole conversation can become misleading. The federal $3,000 HATC is non-refundable. That sounds like tax jargon, but it changes everything. Non-refundable means it can reduce tax you owe, it does not create a payment out of thin air. If you owe federal income tax, the credit can reduce that bill. If you owe little, it helps a little. If you owe none, the credit itself does not suddenly become cash in your hand. And that matters because some older veterans or lower-income veterans may not have enough tax owing for the federal piece to work the way the headline suggests. So if somebody hears $3,000 benefit and imagines a check automatically arriving after a renovation, they can make a very expensive mistake. This is why the safest script for a veteran household is not, great, there's money, let's start. The safest script is, first, find out whether the veteran is a qualifying individual. Second, check whether there is actual tax owing to absorb the non-refundable credit. Third, look at whether the same expense may also fit the medical expense tax credit. Fourth, check whether VAC support or treatment benefits apply. And fifth, confirm what needs pre-authorization before any work begins. That may sound slower than the internet likes, but it is how real households protect themselves. The upside is still real. A veteran who qualifies for the credit, owes tax, documents the work properly, and coordinates it with other programs may save meaningful money. The downside is also real. A veteran who relies on the headline alone may spend first and discover later that the path they needed was different. So here is what I would tell every Canadian veteran, and every spouse, child, or caregiver helping one. Do not let the word accessibility fool you into thinking this only applies to dramatic, visible disability. A home becomes inaccessible long before a person stops being proud, and long before the outside world notices. It becomes inaccessible when the front step becomes a calculated risk. When the bathroom becomes the most dangerous room in the house. When the rail should have been installed a year ago. When the doorway is too tight, the threshold too awkward, the knob too difficult, the tub too high, the floor too slippery, the winter entry too unforgiving. Veterans are especially vulnerable to brushing all of that off because service teaches people to minimize pain, adapt quietly, and carry on longer than they should. But the tax system does not reward silence, and VAC cannot approve the question you never asked. So before you sign anything, look at line 31285. Ask whether the veteran qualifies by age or disability tax credit status. Ask whether the planned work is an enduring renovation that improves access, function, or safety. Ask whether any portion may also be a medical expense. Ask VAC whether the veteran situation fits the Veterans Independence Program or treatment benefits route. Ask whether pre-authorization is required before a single board is cut. And then keep the invoices the right way, with proper details and proof of payment. Because the people who get help are not always the people with the biggest need. Very often, they are the people who asked the right question before the work began. And that is the whole reason this matters. Not to create hype. Not to sell false hope. But to make sure the veteran who already gave enough to this country does not hand over another few $1,000s simply because nobody ever told them the name of the line, the credit, or the program that could have helped.